Something shifted yesterday. You felt it. Maybe you couldn't name it. Maybe you woke up and the air felt different. Your thoughts felt different. The way you were moving through your morning felt like something had quietly changed in the background without asking your permission. And you weren't wrong. Because yesterday was not an ordinary day. Yesterday, the ring of fire solar eclipse moved across the sky. And today, the world stepped across the threshold into the fire horse year. Two events, two completely different traditions, two completely separate systems of understanding time and energy and meaning. Both arrived on the same breath. Both carrying fire. That kind of convergence doesn't happen randomly. And if you're the kind of person who pays attention to the energy underneath events, not just what happened, but what it means, what it's opening, what it's preparing you for, then you already know that what happened yesterday was not the peak of this shift. It was the ignition. The actual acceleration is only beginning now. And in the next 60 minutes, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this convergence is doing in your life, in your energy, in the trajectory of your next chapter, and how to move with it in a way that doesn't just survive this period, but genuinely quantum leaps your direction. Because that's what this gateway is capable of producing, a quantum leap, not a slow, gradual improvement, an actual fundamental shift in trajectory, the kind of shift that makes you look back in 6 months and recognize clearly that was the turning point, that was the moment everything changed direction. That's available to you right now. Let me show you exactly how to access it. Section 2, the post-eclipse effect. What your brain is doing right now. Let's start with something that most people miss entirely in the hours and days following a major eclipse. The post-eclipse effect. Here's what's actually happening in your mind and body right now, and why it matters far more than the eclipse itself. Leading up to a solar eclipse, especially one as charged as a ring of fire eclipse, there is an accumulation of energetic pressure. Most people feel it as a kind of heightened tension in the days before. Sleep becomes slightly erratic. Emotions sit closer to the surface. There's a feeling of something building that you can't quite articulate. Plans feel uncertain. Decisions that normally feel clear become foggy. This isn't psychological weakness. This is your system responding to genuine energetic change in your environment. And then the eclipse arrives, and something releases. The pressure that had been building breaks like a storm breaking. And in the hours and days that follow right now, today, your nervous system is doing something very specific. It's searching for anchors. It's looking for ways to restore a sense of order and grounding after days of anticipation and release. This is why one of the most common post-eclipse experiences is a sudden, almost compulsive urge to handle small things you've been avoiding for weeks. You suddenly send the message you kept putting off. You book the appointment you've been delaying for a month. You fix the small problem that became a background mental irritant. You clear out the email inbox or the cluttered shelf or the unfinished task that's been sitting at the edge of your awareness. From the outside, this might look like a random burst of productivity, but it's not random at all. It's your brain restoring its internal equilibrium. The mind craves closure the way the body craves sleep. And after the pressure of an eclipse, it reaches for the most available sources of closure it can find. This is the post-eclipse reset, and understanding it changes how you experience these days in a significant way. Because here's what matters. Those small completions are not just chores. They're the bridge between the old energy and the new momentum. Every loop you close in these post-eclipse hours becomes energetic space that gets reallocated. Space that was being used to hold that unfinished thing in low-grade background awareness gets freed up. And freed up energy in the context of fire horse momentum doesn't stay still. It moves forward, fast. This is the mechanism of the quantum leap. Not some magical external event, but the combination of internal completion, clearing what's old, and external momentum. The acceleration the fire horse year provides, meeting in the same window and creating a kind of launch. The people who don't understand this use the post-eclipse energy unconsciously. They clear out small tasks without realizing what they're doing. They feel the momentum starting to build without understanding why. They move faster but don't know what's driving them. The people who understand it use it intentionally. They know that every small loop they close right now is adding fuel to a larger acceleration. They choose consciously what to complete, what to release, what to clear, because they understand that what they free up now is what carries them forward into the new timeline. You're one of those people, that's why you're here. Section 3. The Fire Horse. What it actually means. Now let's talk about the fire horse, because this is one of the most misunderstood symbols in the entire landscape of Chinese astrology, and the misunderstanding robs people of the actual power this year carries. Most people, when they hear fire horse, imagine something chaotic, something wild and uncontrollable, a year of explosive, unpredictable energy that might feel thrilling but is impossible to direct. The stereotype is that it's a year of dramatic events, upheaval, things going in every direction at once. That is not what the fire horse means, and it's not what this year is here to do. Let's go to the actual, classical symbolism, because this is where the real power lies. Fire, in its classical symbolic meaning, is not about destruction. Fire is the only element in the natural world that is both its own source and its own expression at the same time. Fire creates light. And what does light do? It reveals. It makes visible what was invisible in the dark. It illuminates pathways that were there all along, waiting for something to light them up. Fire is the element of visibility, of clarity, of the moment when you can finally see what's actually in front of you. This is why cultures across the world associate fire with truth. You cannot hide things comfortably by firelight. Things that looked acceptable in the dark look different when the fire illuminates them. This is why honesty and fire are linked, why revelation and fire are linked, why awakening and fire are linked. Fire doesn't create change. It reveals the change that was already waiting. And the horse is almost universally misread when it comes to this symbolism. Horses are not chaotic animals. Wild horses are free, yes, but even wild horses move with purpose. They follow water. They follow food. They navigate terrain with an intelligence that is deeply, fundamentally directional. The horse as a symbol represents sustained, purposeful movement over distance, not the sprint, the journey. Endurance, commitment to a direction over time, the ability to carry something significant across a great distance without breaking down. Think of what horses meant historically. They were how people delivered messages that mattered. They were how goods that sustained communities moved between places. They were how empires were built and maintained. The horse was the vehicle of consequence, the animal you trusted with things that absolutely could not fail. When you put these two together, fire's revealing light and the horse's sustained, purposeful movement, what you actually get is this. A year where your genuine path becomes illuminated. A year where the work you've been doing in private, in the background, in the quiet consistency of days when no one was watching, finally becomes visible to the world. A year that rewards endurance over performance, substance over show, the real thing over the appearance of the real thing. This is not the year of explosive, unsustainable bursts of energy. This is the year where what you've genuinely built starts to be seen, where the momentum of consistent effort becomes undeniable, where the path you've been on privately becomes publicly visible. And here's the profound alignment of this specific moment. The fire horse year is beginning in the afterglow of a ring of fire eclipse, both of them carrying fire, both of them about revelation, both of them creating the conditions where what has been hidden in the background of your life comes forward into the light. If you have been doing the work, building something, becoming someone, growing in ways that only you have witnessed so far this year, And specifically this moment at its beginning is when that work starts to be seen. Not with fireworks, with the steady, undeniable visibility of firelight on a clear night. Section 4. Your inner voice is your biggest variable right now. Here's the part that no astrology video talks about enough. And I think it's actually the most important piece of what determines whether this eclipse and this fire horse energy carries you forward or leaves you exactly where you started. The voice inside your head. Not the dramatic voice, not the big, obvious critical voice that says outright harsh things. The quiet voice, the background commentary, the running narrative that operates almost below conscious awareness, providing a constant subtle editorial on everything you're doing, everything you're trying, everywhere you're going. In ordinary times, that voice has an influence. In energetically amplified times, post-eclipse, fire horse year beginning, heightened cosmic frequency, that voice has a multiplied influence, maybe 10 times more powerful than it would be in a quiet month. This is because amplified energy doesn't discriminate, it amplifies everything. The momentum, it gets bigger, the clarity, it gets sharper, the doubt, it gets louder, the resistance, it gets heavier. Whatever you're running on the inside, this window makes it more powerful. Which means negative self-talk, even the casual, almost joking, familiar kind, becomes a genuine obstacle in a way it isn't in ordinary circumstances. I'll probably mess this up anyway. Familiar, almost comforting in its self-deprecating way. But in this energetic window, that statement becomes a direct friction against the momentum that's trying to carry you. What if this doesn't work? Natural, reasonable caution. But right now, that question, asked from a place of fear rather than genuine discernment, literally creates resistance in the same field where everything is trying to flow. This is probably too good to be true. A protective instinct from past disappointments. But in a fire horse year that rewards people who are willing to be visible, that instinct toward concealment and protection keeps you in the shadow when the year is asking you to step into the light. I want to be clear about something. This is not about toxic positivity. I'm not asking you to pretend everything is perfect. I'm not asking you to silence all doubt or perform an enthusiasm you don't feel. What I'm asking is far simpler and far more doable. Just stop actively arguing against your own potential. There's a meaningful difference between acknowledging uncertainty and arguing against your own possibility. Uncertainty sounds like, I don't know exactly how this will unfold, and I'm moving forward anyway. Arguing against your own potential sounds like, this probably won't work, I'm not the kind of person things work out for, I'll find a way to mess this up. The first is honest. The second is a story that was written by past experiences of disappointment, past moments of failure, past times when you tried and it didn't work. That story is understandable, and it's worth examining with compassion. But it is not truth, and right now in this window, running that story costs you something real. There's a phrase I want you to try, not as a magical affirmation, just as a replacement for the story. Let's see where this goes. That's it, not this is definitely going to work, not I am abundant and manifesting, just let's see where this goes. That phrase does something specific. It keeps you curious instead of closed. It keeps the path open instead of foreclosing it with negative prediction. It allows forward movement without requiring certainty you don't yet have. And in fire horse energy, curiosity moves faster than fear, every time. You don't have to hype yourself. You don't have to perform confidence. You just have to stop throwing water on the fire that's finally lit. Section 5. The collective reset. Why the world just got easier to move through. Here's something that applies whether you believe in astrology or the Chinese zodiac or any kind of spiritual system at all. When a massive portion of humanity collectively marks a new beginning at the same moment, the world actually becomes easier to move through. This sounds like it should be a spiritual claim, but it's actually a psychological and behavioral one, and the data supports it. Every time there is a large-scale cultural New Year, and Chinese New Year is one of the largest on the planet, involving more than 1 billion people, specific, measurable behavior changes occur across populations. Job searches spike. Relocation inquiries increase. New business filings go up. Personal reinvention attempts accelerate. This happens regardless of whether the individual doing these things celebrates the tradition. Because you're not just influenced by your own psychology. You're embedded in a world where everyone's psychology is shifting simultaneously. Think about what actually changes when 1 billion people collectively decide it's time for a fresh start. Supply chains shift because purchasing patterns shift. Workplace dynamics shift because expectations shift. Social environments shift because people are braver, more willing to initiate, more open to new connection. Financial cycles shift because investment appetite changes. Even the emotional tone of communities shifts. There's a measurable increase in optimism, in willingness to try things, in tolerance for uncertainty. You live inside all of these systems. You are affected by all of these shifts whether you chose to be or not. And here's what this means practically, right now for you. The world around you is in a neutrality window, a shared fresh start energy that lowers the psychological barriers to action. Nobody around you feels entirely stable right now. Even the people who look completely confident on the outside are internally recalibrating, renegotiating their direction, quietly admitting to themselves that something needs to shift. That shared uncertainty is actually a gift to you, because it means the world is temporarily less resistant to new moves. In ordinary times, when you try something new, you're often moving against the inertia of a world that's in its established routines. People are locked into expectations. Systems are running on autopilot. Making a new move requires overcoming not just your own resistance, but the resistance of the environment. But in a global reset window, that environmental resistance softens. The world is more open. People around you are more receptive. Systems that would normally be rigid have a flexibility to them. New moves land more easily because the ground has been softened by collective renewal. This is not mystical. This is behavioral. This is how collective psychology works at scale. And when you layer this collective psychological reset on top of the eclipse energy, the internal clearing and completion, and the fire horse momentum, the acceleration and visibility, what you get is a perfect storm of conditions for something new to actually take hold. The inner work, the outer world, the collective momentum, all aligned. This is what a quantum leap actually looks like from the inside. Not magic, not luck, not divine intervention that shows favoritism. The convergence of internal readiness with external openness, and the decision to move when both are present simultaneously. You are in that convergence right now. The only question is whether you're going to move. Section 6. Reading the signs your trajectory has already shifted. There's something I want to address for the people watching who might be thinking, this all sounds meaningful, but I don't feel a shift. I don't feel the eclipse energy. I'm just going through my normal day and nothing seems different. First, normal is fine. The eclipse doesn't require that you feel something dramatic. It's working regardless. But second, there are signs that your trajectory has already shifted, and most people walk right past them without recognizing what they are. Let me tell you what to look for. The first sign, something stops mattering. There is something in your life, a situation, a person, a worry, an ambition that occupied your mental energy significantly a few weeks or months ago, and you notice that its grip on you has loosened. It doesn't pull your attention the way it used to. The urgency around it has faded. You find yourself not thinking about it in quiet moments when you used to think about it constantly. Most people interpret this as indifference or avoidance. Maybe I've just given up on it. Or worse, They manufacture fresh anxiety about it to restore the familiar feeling of urgency. But the true interpretation is different. When something stops consuming your energy, it's usually because your internal compass has already moved on. Your future no longer needs that thing as its center of gravity. The energy is relocating, away from what you were holding onto and toward what's actually next for you. The loosening of grip is not failure, it's redirection. The second sign, one theme keeps returning. There's something you've tried to dismiss. Maybe an idea you've told yourself isn't realistic. Maybe an opportunity you've kept at arm's length because committing to it felt too vulnerable. Maybe a direction you've been quietly curious about for months but haven't allowed yourself to take seriously. And it keeps coming back. You read something that references it. Someone mentions it in conversation. It appears in a recommendation. You dream about it. Every time you think you've successfully set it aside, it finds its way back into your field. This is not random. Energy doesn't loop without reason. When something keeps returning, it's the universe highlighting a step that your conscious mind has been avoiding. The eclipse and the fire horse energy amplify these returning themes. They become louder, more insistent, more undeniable. The thing that keeps coming back is not tormenting you, it's guiding you. The question isn't why it keeps showing up. The question is why you keep trying to set it aside. The third sign, a quiet, unprovable certainty. This one is the subtlest and the most significant. Something in you knows. You don't have evidence. You don't have proof. You may not even have a plan. But there's a part of you, quiet, stable, not dramatic at all, that simply knows where you're going. That carries a calm, baseline certainty about the direction of your next chapter that doesn't require confirmation from external sources. This isn't wishful thinking. Wishful thinking has an anxious edge to it, a desperate quality of hopping and checking and needing to know for sure. What I'm describing feels nothing like that. It feels settled, like a compass needle that's found north and stopped wobbling. That settling is the sign that your new trajectory has already locked into place internally. The external movement, the opportunities, the circumstances, the confirmations will follow. They always follow an internal lock-in, but the lock-in comes first. If you have that quiet knowing, even faintly, even partially, trust it. Don't demand that it become louder to be believed. Don't wait for external proof before allowing it to guide your choices. It is more reliable than certainty backed by evidence, because it's coming from a layer of you that has access to things your reasoning mind doesn't. Your future reveals itself in whispers before it shows up in the world. Learn to hear the whisper. Section 7. The Momentum Trap. Why speed is your ally right now. Let me introduce you to a concept that might initially sound concerning, but is actually one of the greatest gifts this post-eclipse period offers. I call it the momentum trap. Here's what it is. After a major eclipse, especially one as potent as a ring of fire, the energetic landscape changes rapidly. Decisions that felt paralyzed suddenly have obvious answers. Actions that seemed impossible yesterday now feel natural. The mental loops that kept you circling the same ground for months suddenly lose their grip, and you find yourself moving before you've had time to second-guess yourself. This is what I mean by the momentum trap. Life starts moving, and it becomes very difficult to slow it back down. Now, most people's initial reaction to this description is anxiety. Fast movement is dangerous. Acting without full certainty is reckless. The idea of life accelerating without their full control feels unsafe. And I understand that reaction. It comes from a reasonable instinct toward caution. But I want to offer you a different framing, because the momentum trap, understood correctly, is not a danger. It is a liberation. Here's what momentum actually does in this window. Momentum removes you from the endless deliberation cycle. If you've ever spent weeks or months circling a decision, gathering information, making pros and cons lists, consulting everyone you know, running the scenarios over and over. You know that deliberation past a certain point doesn't produce clarity. It produces exhaustion and analysis paralysis. Momentum breaks that cycle, not by removing the uncertainty, but by making the cost of continued deliberation higher than the cost of moving. The window narrows. The decision becomes necessary. And in that necessity, something interesting happens. Your deepest instincts take over because there's no longer time for the surface-level mental noise to crowd them out. The decisions people make from momentum are often their best decisions, not because they're reckless, but because they're authentic. They come from a place beneath the performing, beneath the managing, beneath the image maintenance, from the level of genuine knowing that usually gets drowned out by overthinking. Momentum is the universe's way of bypassing your hesitation on your behalf. And in fire horse energy, which rewards movement, rewards visibility, rewards showing up fully, the people who allow momentum to carry them forward are the ones who make the most significant moves of their year in this specific window. The practical question is this: where in your life have you been deliberating past the point of usefulness? What decision have you been circling that you already know the answer to but haven't allowed yourself to commit? What action have you been putting off not because you need more information, but because forward movement feels exposing and staying still feels safe? Those are the exact places where the momentum trap becomes a rocket launch. You don't need more time to think. You need to stop using thinking as a substitute for moving. The eclipse already gave you the clarity. The fire horse is providing the fuel. The only ingredient missing is your willingness to step into the motion. Step in. Section 8. The first ordinary day. Why today is more powerful than yesterday. Here's the thing about dramatic events, eclipses, New Year celebrations, cosmic gateways, celestial alignments. Everyone pays attention to the event itself. The build-up, the peak, the moment of arrival. And then the day after comes. Ordinary, no countdown, no cosmic headline, no announcement, just life returning to its normal rhythms. And that ordinary day, that's the most important day of the entire cycle. Not the eclipse, not the New Year celebration, not the peak of the alignment. The first quiet day after. Here's why. Dramatic events create charge. They shift the energy. They open possibilities. They alter the atmosphere. But charge alone doesn't change trajectories. You can stand next to a lightning strike and be completely unaffected if you don't do anything with the electricity that's been generated. The first ordinary day after a major event is when you decide, through your actual behavior, not your intentions, not your resolutions, not your plans, but your actual behavior, whether the event changed anything. Timelines don't begin with miracles. They begin with quiet choices made on unremarkable days. The eclipse shook the atmosphere. The fire horse year set the direction. But what actually determines your new timeline is what you choose to do today, not in a dramatic, life-altering gesture way, in the specific, granular, moment-to-moment way that your actual life is lived. Do you speak from more honesty today than yesterday? Do you make the choice that aligns with the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been? Do you take one step, just one, in the direction that the eclipse illuminated for you? Those small, specific, ordinary choices accumulate. They compound. They become the actual material of a changed trajectory, not the event that inspired the change. The choices made quietly in the days after. This is why I want you to take this hour seriously, not as entertainment, but as preparation. Because the information and the understanding you're building right now is going to meet your ordinary life in ordinary moments. And the difference between the person who got something from this and the person who found it interesting but changed nothing is what happens in those ordinary moments. When the moment comes, and it will come today, in the form of a small choice or a small action or a small step towards something that matters, will you remember what this period is asking of you? Will you take the step? That's the only question that matters. Section 9, the quantum leap EXPLANED, how it actually happens. I've used the phrase quantum leap in the title of this video, and I want to close this hour by explaining exactly what I mean by it. Because it's not hyperbole and it's not magic. It's something specific, and it's something achievable, and understanding the mechanism makes it far more accessible. In physics, a quantum leap describes the movement of an electron from one energy state to another, not gradually, not through a smooth transition, but instantaneously. One moment the electron is in one state, the next moment it's in another. The shift is complete and it's non-reversible. The electron doesn't drift back to where it was. That's the kind of shift I'm describing, not gradual improvement, an actual state change. Here's what produces a quantum leap in a human life. It requires the simultaneous convergence of three elements: internal readiness, external conditions, and a decision. Internal readiness is the preparation. It's everything that happens during the compression periods, the challenges, the uncomfortable questions, the growth that happens when life is hard. It's the clearing of old patterns, the release of what's finished, the building of genuine understanding about who you are and what you're actually moving toward. This takes time. It often feels like nothing is happening when it's happening most intensely, but it's the essential foundation. External conditions are the windows, the moments when the environment becomes temporarily more receptive to change. The post-eclipse period is one of these windows. The fire horse year beginning is one of these windows. Collective reset points are these windows. They don't create the change, you create the chain. But they dramatically reduce the resistance that change usually encounters. And the decision is the third element. The moment where you stop waiting for more certainty, more preparation, more evidence that it's going to work, and you simply move. Not blindly, not recklessly, but from the genuine knowing that the time is right, the direction is clear, and the alternative is remaining in a state you've already outgrown. When all three are present simultaneously, internal readiness, external conditions, and a decision, the leap happens. Not gradually, in a moment. Everything on the other side of that decision looks different from everything on the before side of it. That's the quantum leap. And I want you to understand something important. All three elements are present right now, for you, in this specific window. The internal readiness has been built by everything that brought you to this video, by whatever your path has included over the past months, by the lessons, the challenges, the growth, the quiet shifts that you've been navigating. Whether it felt like preparation or not, it was. The external conditions are the eclipse aftermath, the fire horse momentum, the collective global reset, the atmospheric softening that makes new moves land more easily. The decision is yours. It's always yours. It can't be given to you, created for you, or manufactured by the energy of the moment. It has to come from you, from the genuine part of you that has been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. What is the decision that's been waiting for you to make it? Not someone else's decision for your life. Yours. The one you already know. The one that's been quietly present every time you allow yourself to be completely honest about what you want, where you're going, and what the next step actually is. Make it. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel more certain. Not when conditions are more perfect. Now, in this window, while the eclipse energy is still fresh and the fire horse is still in its first momentum and the world is still in its neutrality of collective renewal. Make the decision. Take the step. Allow the leap. Because everything your life has been building toward through all the difficult chapters, all the uncertain periods, all the quiet preparation that only you have witnessed, it's all been pointing at this. The gateway is open, and you're ready to walk through it. If you stayed with me through this full hour, I want to close with something simple. You don't have to rush to match the pace of the fire horse. The energy of this year isn't asking you to sprint and exhaust yourself. It's asking you to move with clarity and consistency, to let your genuine momentum build naturally from an honest foundation. You don't have to decode every detail of what the eclipse set in motion. The shifts that matter most are the ones you'll feel in your gut before you understand them in your mind. And most importantly, through all the intensity of this convergence, the eclipse, the new year, the building momentum, the approaching acceleration, you are still guided, still protected, still moving towards something that is genuinely yours. The fire that's been lit in this gateway was lit for you, not to overwhelm you, not to burn what matters, but to illuminate the path that's been waiting and to finally, clearly, show you which direction to walk. Better things are on the way. They're not just on the way. They're already in motion. And you are exactly the right person, in exactly the right moment to meet them. Speak warmly and directly to camera. If this hour gave you something real, a perspective shift, a piece of clarity, even just the feeling that you're not alone in what you're navigating, share it. Pass it to one person who's in the middle of a transition right now. Sometimes the right words arrive at exactly the right moment. Thank you for being here through the whole journey today. I'll see you in the next one.